the show where we discuss the thoughts that inch their way into our brain and keep us up when we should be sleeping. I'm your host, Razlo, and tonight I have game designer of Suddenly Drunk and host of the YouTube channel Geek Punk, Skaidris, on the show to help keep me up. Tonight, we're going to discuss such topics as, is invisibility just for perverts? What is the geekiest thing you've ever done? And we share nightmare convention stories. Please enjoy.
Wake up.
Skaidris. I'm having some issues sleeping, and
Why
it would just really
problem sleeping, buddy? What are you thinking about?
well, beyond the fact that it's really nice of you to have, traveled so far to be in bed with me and then creepily stared at me, which I know is just because you missed me.
I miss you. I haven't seen you in fucking ages. I haven't seen you in
It's been really
now,
long.
How long?
It's this issue of us being several, an ocean or two away from each other. The US and Australia, not exactly walking distance, unfortunately.
Well, I thought it's been so long since I've seen you that I would come over, I'll go, what's old mate Razlo doing? I'll just slip into his bed and just see what he's thinking about.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Most people would be creeped out, and you're lucky you caught me on a night I'm not with my wife, but but it's good that you did anyways, because I have been having trouble sleeping because there's a bunch of topics that are kind of keeping me awake, and I feel like if I don't get them off my chest and talk to someone about them, I'm not going to be able to sleep. So I don't know if you have anything you need to talk about as well, but maybe we could just go back and forth and kind of relieve each other's anxieties.
I have a few things I need to talk about too.
Okay, so this is great. So let's only make sure that we only talk about very important things, though, because both of us are busy men and we have to get back to sleep. So, I want to talk about just the most important topics, such as, is invisibility superpower just for perverts?
Like, it depends. When you say is it just for perverts, it would.
I feel like that's like the current narrative that everyone tries to drum up about. As a kid, it was this hard fought debate about invisibility versus flying, right? And then something happened, I think, once people started talking about consent and other things more, where invisibility has gotten ragged on now to the point that people see it as exclusively a power for perverts in arguments, and I want to know what you thought of that.
Because it doesn't make, as a power, it doesn't make much sense to just have by itself. Mm-hmm. So well, that's why it's a weird thing, because as a power, usually when you get powers, they all have some sort of theme that they all join along with. And when you have a superpower that's invisibility, you can't just have invisibility, because what can you do with invisibility? All it is oh, they can't see me, so I walk up to them, and it's the same thing just over and over again. And outside of that, it would just be deviancy if that's the only power you have.
I think there's levels of deviancy, right? And I was trying to think of some acceptable, at least in my mind, uses for invisibility. Let's say that you're at a concert for a band that you absolutely love. How cool would it be to be able to go up on stage without being stopped and just be that fucking close to the concert watching it?
But then again, yes, you could do that, but that's just something that a deviant would do when they're not doing deviant stuff, you know what I mean? That's just in between, some in between perks. It does make sense that is a power that would lead to just a lot of privilege. If you have that space to be able to go anywhere and do anything like that, you're going to be well loaded with that. But have you seen The Boys recently?
I need to check that out. I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet.
Because they have an invisible character in that, and it's essentially what you do. He's a pervert. Like that's it. He's like
Well,
hangs out in the bathrooms
so
the whole
the concert
time.
thing isn't perverted. I obviously you want to stay away from where pyros get shot off. And you want to make sure you get out of the way when the guy goes to run to do his guitar solo or whatever. There's danger involved for sure, but I think that's a harmless crime. If someone's going to attack you and you suddenly turn invisible, that's gonna fuck them up. You're gonna be able to probably be able to get out of that situation pretty easily.
I mean, imagine you can't. The stories, if you were a hero, if every battle you took and like won was just that when they weren't watching, you did the worst thing to them. That's not like a heroic. You can't tell many heroic stories.
But when we're talking about the debate between flying and invisibility, you're not winning. I mean, unless every battle you ever do with flying is you pick a guy up, go real high, and drop him.
Well, flying traditionally is one that's coupled with other powers. I don't.
But
really
we're talking
think
about
any
the
heroes
debate.
that only can just fly.
This is the debate between these two powers. So hide from attackers. You could ignore curfew laws. Like when there's a nice lake that's like, off limits, like a state lake or something that's off limits after a certain time. You could be like,
people should ignore curfew laws regardless, because that doesn't.
They
make
should,
any sense.
but it sucks getting hassled by the cops. And I'm saying they're not gonna check out a few ripples in the water if they see that, So you could just jump in the lake and swim around. Now the problem is you would need some friends that can also turn invisible, so maybe it's less fun then.
Yeah. True.
But I thought but still, I like swimming at night, so I would definitely take advantage of that. Now I'm stretching, obviously, it's difficult, but I'm just saying there's some. And then here's the one that I think most people would use with the most frequency is, you have a lot of instances in your life, or I should say, I have a lot of instances in my life, where you do or say something incredibly awkward, like you're feeling really cool, and then all of a sudden you
fade out.
Yeah, and everyone's like looking at you like, what a cool guy. And then that's the moment you trip over something and fall on your face or whatever. And how much better would it be if you just instantly disappeared? You'd just be like, they're going to be so amazed by that, they're not going to be thinking about the fact that this douchebag just fell on his face.
True. I do like the idea of just being like, any situation, just going, you know what?
Yeah.
I just physically do not want to be
done.
seen anymore, and just like walk behind one corner, and then just come back, and if I just get back to my computer and get back to work.
Yeah.
Biff.
Right. I think people would actually legit love using the power. I think that it's just it's difficult for people to picture someone not using it nefariously, and but I think for people that were of good intentions, they'd find some really cool, fun ways to use it on a pretty regular basis. That's my defense for invisibility.
Standing up for all them invisible boys.
I'm just saying, if you've picked invisibility as your power, I'm not immediately calling you out as a pervert. That's all.
Yeah, I wouldn't call someone out for it, no.
Speaking of perverts, you were wondering about urinal etiquette. Was there something you had to say regarding that?
Like, I've seen a few really interesting graphs on urinal etiquette before. Like,
okay.
Like it'll have, like, they're almost like brain teasers. They'll have, like, there'll be like 5 urinals in a row, and they'll have like a person standing on the second last one, and then the one here, it's like, which urinal are you supposed to go to? And it's like, the one that's the furthest away in between them. But then it's like, what do you do if it's, I think I've had some awkward moments myself in the urinals, and it's had me reassess what that game is. Like, my biggest faux pas that's happened at the urinals semi-recently was when people recognize you at the urinals. Yeah. That's the wrong time to say, oh, hey, I recognize you, is when their dick is out. Like, no. Because first of all, like, you can't get away from that situation. And second of all, it's like, are you recognizing me because of my dick? Like, it's like, oh, who is that guy? I can't tell. Let's go to the toilet. I'll go check his dick out and just make sure it's like, that's where I recognize you.
It's weird when there's like a line of 5 different urinals. It's a real power move for the guy that then goes directly next to you. You're like,
Yep.
why did you do this?
That's a massive
There was no
power
reason
move.
this needed to happen.
Do you ever what do you think about if you're already do you ever have the issue where if you're urinal and you're like, there are a lot of people here, and you're like, I need to pee because otherwise it's just me walking up to a wall, taking the thing out, and just standing there with a bunch of people, like and when it gets awkward, it makes it harder and harder to pee. Because I have this one reference that I'm actually unsure. I know it's from a movie somewhere, but I don't know which one. But
Okay.
it runs through my mind, and it without fail allows me to pee. Would you? I'm going to recite what the scene.
I'd love to hear these magic words. I'm a pee-shy person, so this might help me.
The scene is it's someone is doing a wee in this movie, and then someone else comes up and they see they're a bit pee shy, and a guy comes up who's very aggressive or whatever. He's the bad guy, and he comes up and starts peeing next to him and goes, "Oh, having some troubles peeing there, are you?" He's like, "Oh, this will help you out," and he just goes, and just like blowing on the other guy's dick. I do the, and then he starts peeing in the thing, and it's like, yes, that makes sense. It's such that's such a power move thing to do to someone, to blow on their dick, like, I'll help you. I'm gonna help assist you wee. No, that's such a full-on move. But whenever I think about that scene, when I'm at the urinal, I think of like someone blowing on my dick. It works. I pee like immediately. And it's not that I actually want the person next to me to go blow on the dick, but it's like such a weird scene that it takes me out of it. And I just like, and like short circuit my brain, and it just goes, "Oh, you need to pee," and I go.
I really thought you were going to say the weird thing about me is it works a little differently for me. I can only pee if I'm blowing on someone else's dick.
Well, I haven't tried that yet. Like, I'll think about taking that one on.
Or I was thinking that you were asking others for help, where it's like, hey,
Can someone blow my dick real quick?
whenever you were going to tie it into the person recognizing you. Whenever someone says they recognize you, you go, "Great, can you do me a favor? Can you just blow on my dick?" It really helps me.
I just
helps
really
me
feel really
pee.
awkward right now. If I'm really shy, like being recognized. If you could just like, can you do a favor?
I've done the thing where, especially at like a convention or something, where it's like I am pee shy, but it takes so much longer to get a stall than it does to get a urinal. And so sometimes I'll try to man up, and I'll go, you know what? No, I'm gonna go pee on this urinal. I need to do it. That's the worst time to try to test out if you're gonna be pee shy or not, because there's a lot of people watching you. And you can maybe have one or two people come and go from the urinal next to you and be like, "Oh, maybe that guy's just unloading a lot." But when they see no pee coming out and you've just been standing there for now several people, it's just the worst feel. It looks like you're just there to hang out to
Just hanging out.
You're doing like an informal survey of like the convention's like penis like size, quotients. To be like, "Oh, this just in, PAX geeks have bigger dicks than like, Gen Con people," or something like that. So
It's the most unfounded paranoia as well, because it's not like I've ever been like sitting there like happily peeing at the urinal, looking over at someone else, going like,
right.
"What are you doing, man? Like, it's easy to squeeze it out. What are you doing?" Like, it's not.
Yeah.
No one is monitoring other people's like time it takes for them to pee, except up in here.
I mean, unless you're just not moving from the urinal at all, because you can't.
for like an hour. Yeah, all right. There's an amount of time that is.
I don't think it
acceptable.
takes an hour. I think like the time is sped up when there's like a line of 8 people or 12 people, and they see this guy standing there at the same urinal for multiple people. It's you just gotta walk away, and then you do the thing where it's like really shameful, where you go into the line for the stall, and then everyone else in line has to wonder like, was that guy pee shy or did he suddenly have to poop himself?
Yeah.
But she's like, I got to do it. I'm not going to leave the bathroom and I go to a different bathroom somewhere else here. I gotta, accept the fact that I failed. Everyone's seen my failure. And now I'm moving into the other one.
They've seen your failure to launch.
Right. And one thing that people, often call out as being a failure is prequels. I've seen this narrative whenever I try to tell people about a prequel movie or a prequel TV show or comic or whatever. They always have this, not always, but the majority of people have this thing where they go, how can you possibly care about a prequel because you know where it's going to end? And my thing I always find confusing about that is, why are you watching stories in the first place?
Yeah, true.
If it's an on-off scenario, like a computer of like, does character die or not? And when you know the character doesn't die, like if that was so easy for you to spoil a movie where it's like, hey, just so you know, just saw Pulp Fiction, not everybody dies in it. Oh, well, fuck, I'm not watching it now.
Yeah,
I know they don't all die. Because I've like tried to have people be like, I don't know if you ever watched Better Call Saul at all.
Yeah.
But it's legitimately an amazing show. But there's a lot of people that don't watch it because they're like, well, I already know what happens with that character.
No,
and I'm like,
that one,
you don't know what happens in anything leading up to what you've seen. And there's more drama in the human condition than exclusively what happens at the end of your path. And so I just don't understand how people get so weird about prequel stories and be like, oh, there's no stakes, there's no this, there's no that. It's like, as long as there's a cast that has characters you grow to care about, there's plenty of stakes in that. It's just the only thing you know for certain is they don't die, which you probably know that to be true of most movies and most stories.
And Better Call Saul's like an amazing one anyway, because, they made sure to have his base character at the very start of that series be, monumentally different from where he ends up when he's starting in Breaking Bad. And so the character development and they get to choose the arc of the types of stories they can tell in those prequels. Like, they don't really seem, those people who seem to be complaining about prequels don't really seem to understand that it's like, no, like, a prequel isn't like a film that they actually film and then they film the next one and put the next one out first and then they just show you the previous film after. So what? No. They know that you've seen that media before and they're like, what can we tell? What different angle can we tell? What story in particular? If they end up there, what's the best, most interesting way that we can have him start here to get there? And yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It
enriches the world, right? And so it's one of those things, like a good prequel can have it so that not only does it teach you more about the character, but it teaches you more about the world of the thing that you had enjoyed in the first place. So my confusion also is just there. If you're like, hey man, I'm the biggest Breaking Bad fan there ever was. I've seen every episode 6 times. And you're like, yeah, I don't watch Better Call Saul. I'm like, well, that's strange because like, you're getting so much more, like when other characters show up that are on, the series, you feel differently about them because you're seeing them in a different light. Because it's a very different situation where you have one person who's making drugs and his interactions with people, especially with the way that Walter White was, where he's kind of a dick, versus like this other character who is like kind of lovable even if he's scummy, and like the way people interact with him is like entirely different. And he doesn't have that thing where it's like, oh, I've got all this power. He's like just like trying to get out of every scrape, like just barely, knowing he can't size up.
That case example as well is a great one for prequels because, Breaking Bad was that entire point of that show was, how you can take someone who's super relatable and is like the good guy and then go all the way to making them like the villain, like how you could like see and justify yourself potentially even getting to this point. And so the fact that they're like, okay, and then now it's Better Call Saul, where you know him as that last thing that he is. It's like, now we're going to do the exact same of how did someone else you could relate to get to that point of being like, yes, a villain, but a criminal.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, he's a criminal.
he's an anti-hero or a villain,
Anti-hero.
depending on how you read what happens.
Depending on which episode.
Right.
Yeah.
I also thought it was. Well, I mean, that's a tangent. I'm not going to go into how people were weird about like, was the characters getting bad? They're like, it's getting hard to watch. The guy's getting really bad, and I'm like, it's kind of the title of the show. But I guess there's some people that just think that every prequel, should never exist, and I disagree with them. But you wanted to bring up, which games should have never been made. Mm-hmm. I was curious what your thoughts were there.
Okay, the reason why I brought that one up is because we've been playing a lot of games recently on my channel, and we've been going for that sort of, Geek Punk, youtube.com/geekpunk, and we're playing a lot of like late 90s, early naughty games, and it's really clearly present and obvious that it's like they didn't know what would work for games at that point.
Right.
Like, any property that was popular somewhere else, they're like, let's try and make, like, a video game version of it. Like, we played Celebrity Deathmatch, and like, Jackass the Game is one that we're going through a lot at the moment. And we're loving Jackass the Game at the moment. But if I bought that when it came out, I would be furious. I did buy that when it came out. I bought it on PSP. I think that was what it was on a PSP. Were you happy with it? Tell me. I need to know.
Yeah, no, I did have fun with it. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of shallow, but
you can't play it more than once.
It's one of those things where like you want to like pass it back and forth between another person that you're in the room with. And so I kind of picked a bad platform for it because you really can't do that with PSP.
So, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, 'cause we actually lost our save file when we were recording it, and wanted to go back and then record more, and we realized that we lost it, and so we had to like play those mini games to catch up again. And we're like, I was furious because I was like, why am I doing this again? Like, not that it was like it didn't take long to get up there, and I was way better at those mini games, but just playing those mini games when I had no actual drive or need to infuriated me. Yeah. But I still think the Jackass game that could have been made in general. But Celebrity Deathmatch should not have been made.
Well, I think I slightly disagree with like your premise of they were trying to figure out what games could be made. I think the difference is that the stakes were so much lower. When you go to every single generation, the stakes of how much money it costs to make a thing, how many people need to buy it, what money you need to make to recoup your investment keeps going up. And it's a bummer to me because a lot of the, games that I really loved on the PS1 and PS2 were super weird games that even at the time you're like, why does this exist? Let alone now where it really, really stands out as why does this exist? But it was because people knew they just had to sell a handful of copies and they were going to make their money back. And we get some of that in the indie space, but even still, it's not quite to the same degree because the money being put into it and the staffs being put on those games was still more than what the average indie game is. Sure. And so there was oftentimes more to what those games were, or at least the production values were higher. And it's a bummer that we've gotten into every generation, the prism of what games can be allowed to exist kind of shrinks in every space outside of the indie space or the mobile game space, which most people aren't going to take chances on the mobile game space either. So it's all these like safe bets and sequels and
I work in the mobile game space.
No, I'm saying on both ends. It's on the console end, it's a lot of safe bets and sequels, and then on the mobile end space, there's some really amazing gems, but they're hidden within a bunch of other titles that are just trying to like have a million different pop-ups and like take as much money from the player as possible and like have exhaustion mechanics, which no one's ever been like, you know what I love in a game? Exhaustion mechanics. Or I like having to like be forced to buy to play more.
So it's just it's a bummer to see that kind of stuff go. But that's a total tangent to the topic because we're talking about stuff that shouldn't exist. So you're saying celebrity deathmatch? Why shouldn't that exist?
Okay, it was buggy as fuck. Like it didn't work half the time. It would just keep freezing. It's like they were trying to make a wrestling game like Celebrity Deathmatch is on MTV.
Yeah.
But to make it more like, okay, instead of going like, all right, we'll do like up, left, right will be this combo and down, down, B or whatever will be this attack. They just made the same attack buttons, just do a different attack. So you could be like going like, you know, punch, 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 but then now that punch button that you were still just pressing, you press it again and they'll spin around and they'll do a fart attack, you know, like that, and it's like, what? Why did that change? So to make it more interesting, like the TV show, like lots of things going on, they were like, we'll just change what the attacks do, and so it seems more interesting, instead of actually making an interesting and diverse like, game.
Does that leave you open for like attacks and stuff though, if your character is doing like different stuff because the hitbox is different and stuff like that?
Well, because you don't even know what you're doing.
Right.
Like some of the attacks would come out from behind you, like literally the fight would come from behind you, so you're facing forward, like attacking, and then all of a sudden they bend over front, and front. So then you're turning around, going front, front, doing that for a while, and then it no longer does that attack anymore.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, okay, what about you? Have you ever played any game where you were like, this is so inexcusable, it just shouldn't be here?
You know, I think that, you know, a classic one of that is E.T. You know, that was like an early
Did you ever play
game
that properly though? Like,
I did, yeah. So like, I remember back before I had a console, and you just would end up at relatives' houses, and whatever they just happened to have lying around, you were like, good enough, I'll play it. And I was a fan of the movie because I was a human being. And so I was like, oh, awesome, I can't wait to play this. And it's just inscrutable. Like, nothing about the game you're saying that's, you know, that Celebrity Deathmatch or whatever doesn't make sense. This is like whole other levels of, and even by Atari standards, where almost the bread and butter was games that barely made sense and barely did anything. This was one that stood out as like, what the actual fuck is happening here?
Was it just like you'd fall down holes looking for keys, and then
you're like traversing?
G-men would hunt you down.
Yeah, and you can't defend yourself, and then you randomly just fall into holes that you can't see, and then his neck extends for some reason, like as like a crane to get you out of the pit.
Isn't that
like
bizarre when they're like, so they're sitting there and you can tell that like they're like, all right, what are we gonna do? What kind of powers or abilities can this character do? Because, you know, there hasn't been that many games beforehand, so they're kind of like writing the rule book as they're going along. It's like, well, let's watch the movie. What sort of powers does E.T. seem to have? Oh, he does this. He's got like a long neck. It's probably we can probably do something with that, yeah.
Well, some people. Now the person that made the game is a talented game developer, and he had, I think, like 2 weeks to make the game or whatever.
Like no time.
And that's his excuse for it. And most people will just be like, well, you know, fair enough. Like, no wonder. But I'm still going to take issue with that particular mechanic because motherfucking E.T. can make shit levitate.
Yeah, it's true.
He's already got an ability to get him out of a hole. One thing that E.T. doesn't do in the movie ever is make his neck extend like a lasso to get himself out of situations. So like, if I'm sitting there with a problem of, I decided you fall in holes in this game and I want you to be able to get out, I think I'm probably going to go for the levitation route first before I go to the route of your neck extends in a really gross way.
I actually found and read the sequel to E.T. In an op shop. It was like this little book, and it was like E.T. It's like the journey back home to the green planet or something, and it was fucked because it was like it was from the point that E.T. leaves and like gets back to his home, and from then it's like pretty much just talking like normal humans because they're able to communicate with each other properly. And like, that's weird. Don't do that. Don't all of a sudden like give an ET speech and be like everyone else. Like, no. This is weird. I can't imagine any of this in my mind. Little fluffy fucking testicle sack body. No.
Elliot crashes onto his planet, and to them just sounds like "oh" or whatever.
Well, apparently, in that book, I mean, the one thing that stuck in my head, this was years ago, I barely remember it now, but they were like, plant. You know how he could like heal, plants would grow that he would touch or whatever. That was like what the world was essentially, and they would like live in like houses and that were built by plants and shit, and it was like a green planet.
Huh?
Did not think that the testicle boy was going to be just living in a flower house.
Yeah. So another game that I think shouldn't have ever been made, and this was a trend that happened a lot back on the, was this original Xbox? I think it was original Xbox. It was a period where they thought whenever you brought back an old property, you had to up the attitude factor.
Right.
And
like
so, like Bomberman Act Zero, where they made Bomberman realistic. He has human body proportions.
Whoa,
got realistic looking graphics.
Bomberman.
And it's
what was it called again?
Act Zero. And it's a story focused game.
Oh no.
Everything about it is confusing as to why you would do that.
3 out of 10
Oh, it's awful.
on IGN. Whoa.
It's really gross looking. Yeah, it's upsetting.
Yeah, that's sad.
And then they were like, okay, that was a mistake, and then went right back to like super deformed, like cutesy Bomberman,
Like,
as they should have done.
Great design as well. Bomberman's like not entirely up there, but it's, next to a Kirby.
Well, it was like, the same thing was happening with movies, right? It was like, oh, we got a comic book property. We could put them in the outfits they wear in the comics, but nobody's going to see this movie if we do that. So everyone always just wears black leather. Everyone in like a comic book movie from like the 90s and early 2000s looks like they just came out of a fetish fair. They're just like from head to toe, full black leather outfits. They want to be called daddy, and they can make blades come out of their hands. It's like
I reckon that's interesting because I reckon the costuming industry just literally must not have been there. Like,
they didn't think people would like it.
It's an obscure thing to make. Like, they had to go through the hard yards, I reckon, to figure out how to have bright colors and stuff on the screen without it looking batshit crazy.
That wasn't it. They just didn't have any faith that people would like it. So they're like, oh, we got to make this more grounded. We got to make it more realistic. We don't think that, superheroes would wear wacky outfits in real life. And it's like the logic leaps you have to get to where you're worried about that when you're making a comic book movie is like so ridiculous to me, where it's like, oh, the outfits are where it's going to lose people.
Well, where do you reckon that they finally got superhero outfits right?
I think like once
like
the original,
when it went from
they still did it a little bit, but like I remember the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, like were the first superhero movie that I could think of that were really high production value, that were trying to have the suit look like the comics. They still did some stuff, like everything's overly textured, so they still had
basketball. It's like a basketball texture. Like they found ways of giving texture to texture itself. Like I agree with you. I think the Sam Raimi Spider-Man was where the costuming started to realize like different things that they could do to stop things seeing so flat colors.
Right.
Like from since then, like they had Superman and a few others, and Captain America as well, where they would have things that would just be like this normally, like a big scale or something on an outfit. They would then put patterns into that scale itself, so it wouldn't look so flat and weird. And like I think that's when they kind of broke through and realized they could have proper textures and stuff.
Yeah, so that was better. Total tangent. Who we're talking about. Do you have any other games that were on your thoughts on this, or was it mostly just you hated Celebrity Deathmatch?
It's mostly that I wanted to know what you thought about things that shouldn't exist.
So two that are going to upset some people. DMC, lowercase m.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be okay if that didn't exist. I know there's people that love it, but it falls into line with like a lot of things that happen with movies and TV and games and stuff, where it's like, if you can take this in a vacuum outside of the property it's a part of, you could maybe enjoy it. But most people, including myself, have a hard time doing that because you bothered to put the name of the thing you're trying to be, and then you're just like, but I'm going to disregard what this thing is and just make my own thing. And it's like, why is Dante like this strung out heroin guy? Like why is he so emo? Like, it's like this, it made me sad because, I think a lot of people have had friends who have gotten into drugs, and you're like, where's that happy-go-lucky guy that I remember? And you don't expect to see it with your video game heroes. So
I haven't played Devil May Cry much at all, but my most experience with it is more the Devil May Cry DLC in Monster Hunter. I made sure to get that outfit for that because the sword was cool.
That's the whole thing. Dante's got a cool look to it. It's like, you didn't. Red trench coats are still cool. Giant fucking swords are still cool. And a dude with a cool white hair is still cool. You didn't need to reinvent it. And the other one, this is more people on my side, still some people mad at me. I would have been okay with Mass Effect 3 never existing.
But then, would it be left at 2 then? You're saying if
there was
nothing else that came after?
So if nothing else came after, including the second
Andromeda.
series, I would be left with like, remember how great Mass Effect was?
Okay.
And I would only have good memories. I'd be like, you know what they should do? Someday they should do that proper and finish that. And I'd always have that in my head. But I'd be like, but outside of it not finishing, I'd have good feelings. And a lot of people will point to like Mass Effect 3 and they'll complain about the ending of it and say that's where the issue is. But for me, it was like, the whole thing obviously didn't have enough time. And there'd be stuff where it's like, hey, go check out this alien species planet of the species that you've really been interested in for 2 games. And you're like, oh man, I can't wait to touch down. And the mission was just collecting resources. And so it's just like, you're in your ship, it's like, bloop, you did it. You collected the resources. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You made a whole like mission where I was supposed to finally check out what life is like for this species. And it was just collect some oil. There was like a bunch of stuff like that, or it was like storylines where it's like, hey, do you want to pay back this character who's been fucking with you for like several missions? And I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to see him go down. It fades to black and then comes back and it's like, you totally fucked him up. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Why'd you do that?
I don't remember any of that. Like, because in Mass Effect 3, I think I did enjoy it largely. Like, it was okay. But the end was like, I didn't know it was going to end there. I just thought there was more to it. So I left the whole thing feeling like, underwhelmed, undersatisfied. But then that was really it for me. Where the one that came out after, I could barely play that. And I don't know if it was that I just didn't give it enough time or whatever, but it just didn't hold me.
Right. Yeah, no, so I just, it bummed me out and it also took like a developer who I would play anything they made, sight unseen, and go like, now I scrutinize. And thank goodness I do, I guess, considering how things have gone. But it made it so that I would like scrutinize everything that they put out and be like, I'll wait and see on this one. I'm not pre-ordering this game, And it's a bummer when you have a developer where you're like, they can never fail. Everything they do, I love. And then when that doesn't work out anymore, and have to like side eye everything that they do, it's because there's not many developers that you can feel that way about, that you can just love everything they put out.
The only brand that hasn't done that I would be really upset if they did find a way to make me feel that way would be like Devolver Digital.
Sure, yeah. Even if it's not for you.
It used to be Bethesda.
Yeah.
But Bethesda's had some missteps.
They've
Especially
tumbled
with
a
their
bit.
hunt of trying to like get into the IAPs, in-app purchases and stuff with their games.
Yeah. So on the game tip, you've been playing on your Geek Punk YouTube channel. You've been playing Tony Hawk games a bunch, and you were wondering what songs we would both put into a soundtrack if they were going to make another Tony Hawk game.
Yeah, because that's a big question for me. Like,
Yeah.
not as in I need to know the answers of this thing, but
Right.
like those soundtracks mean so much to like a lot of people, and they were seminal at that sort of time as well. And I'm really unsure like what bands now could be in sort of that same ballpark.
I took your question and I took it as an opportunity to ruin Tony Hawk games.
All right.
And
What have you got?
so I was thinking that, one of the, maybe it's set up so that this song plays more than the others, but it's the Street Sharks theme song.
Wait, I don't remember the Street Sharks theme song.
It's an interesting, it's totally Jossum. It talks about how they're street sharks and how badass they are. And, I think it would inspire some people while they're doing tricks.
Oh, yeah, fuck you. Actually, you know what? No, I like it. Because, like, street sharks. It's like, yeah, if you're, like, skating, and you're like, yeah, I'm a street shark. I'm carving up this asphalt.
So
I'm
some
here for
people,
that.
some people would like that. This would be a little bit, I think this would lose some people more maybe than the Street Sharks thing. I want to have context sensitive music. So whenever you go to do a grind, it plays like porn music.
Right. Yeah. What about if you were doing, like, flips and spins in the air? What would that be? If you're going to start changing sound effects. If grind is...
Maybe fly higher than an eagle. I don't know.
Oohs and ahs for grab tricks.
So I'm still trying to troll people. So I don't care which song because it doesn't matter. But any Corey Feldman song.
That's right. He's trying to have a music career, isn't he?
It's some of the worst music I've ever heard in my life. And I want to see, I want the game to auto capture whenever the song comes on to see if people fuck up their tricks. They're in the middle of like a sick combo and all of a sudden a Corey Feldman song comes up and they immediately tumble off the board. And then the last thing is, and this is also gimmicky, but the Kit Kat jingle, Give Me a Break, I want to have it happen whenever you wipe out really bad. And you break some bones. It plays the Kit Kat Give Me a Break jingle.
I feel like we could make this version of Tony Hawk. All it is one mod. It's one good evening of getting at it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think all this would be really funny for like the first time it happened. And then imagine people would just be so angry at what they were playing. And they'd be like, gameplay-wise, this is the best Tony Hawk game that's ever been created. It does everything we ever wanted it to do. Why did they put this guy in charge of the soundtrack? People would be modding it to play other music.
I think you answered all the questions and I had about Tony Hawk. Like, I feel very confident with where the next game's going to go if it happens.
Right. I want to just take some pressure off the developers because I don't want people to complain so much about how the game's not as good as it used to be. They could just entirely be focused on the music and be distracted from how half-assed an effort Activision put in.
They're like, all right, if you wanted another Tony Hawk game, we couldn't get all those licenses. Well, I'm going to tell you what, this is not impossible that this could happen because they won't re-release the games because Tony Hawk is actually not in contract with Activision anymore, and all those song deals that they've made are long expired for the actual soundtrack. So I reckon if they ever did actually strike up a deal where they did re-release a Tony Hawk game, they likely would need to license new music for it. So if you manage to get yourself in that position, you can make it happen.
I don't think anyone's gonna trust me with that, especially when it starts with the Street Sharks theme song. I tried to find when I had the ability to look up licenses for toys. I tried to find the people who had the license to Street Sharks, but I just couldn't. And I sent them a message that I wanted to make Street Sharks toys, but they did not contact me back.
There's got to be there's definitely a whole market for that, like Street Shark, Biker Mice from Mars. Like,
right.
What was that cats one? SWAT cats.
SWAT cats, yeah.
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 I just
obscure shit. Well, it probably would have sold better than what we ended up making.
Mondo would do it. Mondo might do it. Mondo do lots of stuff like He-Man. They're doing He-Man stuff at the moment, like lots of old retro stuff that they're doing new, like, detailed versions for. I could definitely see Mondo's Street Shark. That'd be cool.
I mean, I think it would sell, if you want to get ironic sales, I think it's a great property for people to buy, like, because they're just, like, shocked it exists kind of thing. So I'd be curious to see, like, where it would net out sales-wise versus something that actually makes sense to make. It might be surprising. Speaking of surprising, you had several years running a game bar, and I had the pleasure of visiting there a few times, and it was pretty wild every time that I visited there. And I'm sure that over the history of your time working at multiple video game bars, you have some interesting stories. So I was like, if I have Skaidris on here, I have to at least get a few stories of things that had happened in your time being in that scene.
I didn't run a gaming bar. It was we were promoters for a club where we made like a gaming event thing for 5 years. So for 5 years we ran like an event in this space.
For those nights it was a game bar though.
For those nights it was definitely a gaming bar.
Yeah.
Big stories about doing that. I don't know. It was like the whole thing was such like a learning experience that it was like each time something would happen, it was you had to like stop and then sort of analyze everything. Like, okay, I had like someone come in when I was working at like Manabar back in the day. They came up and they like walked right up to me at the bar, and then started like looking at me, and then going, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what this is about. And then they went out the back, had some drink, came back, went, yeah. I'm like, I still don't know what's going on. And then he comes up and goes, I'm like, what? He's like, It's like, what? It was like, last night. It's like, what? Like, last night. Like, I know you were there. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? It's the round table. I'm like, excuse me? It's like, you're at the round table. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And I can only fathom someone had, from what I pieced from this weird interaction, from little bits and pieces of things that they'd said, it seems like they had a dream, a medieval-themed dream the night before, and there was a round table, and I was there, and that I must now somehow be conscious that I know that they know that I was there, that I was in their dream in the round table thing, and he kept giving me like the eyes of like, come on, like make eye contact, like you know what's up, like you'll see me in you'll see the spark of eyes that recognizes that we were both there at the round table, and it obviously never happened because it doesn't make any sense. But like things like that would happen over time, and it's kind of like, your first instinct is almost to be like, I'm going to tell everyone about this, and this is going to be super funny or whatever. But then I was like, hold on, it's like, I think this person's just like really mentally ill. Like,
but isn't it near impossible to tell if someone's mentally ill though, or really high or really drunk? Sometimes.
No.
No.
I think, no. I mean, okay. like I say, Manabar early on, that's in Fitzroy in Australia, which is like really, really lots of alcoholics around, lots of drug addicts around, but in a lot of other like geek scenes and that, like there's a lot of diversity with like a neural I feel like not everyone is neurotypical essentially in like geek
Sure.
scenes and stuff, and it's really easy to like see. It's like, oh, this person is clearly struggling with anxiety, this person is clearly struggling with this. Oh, you see a lot of people on drugs. It's like, oh, that person is vibrating at this frequency, where someone's usually like down here. Like, it's easy to tell if someone, I mean, especially around here, at least I've got enough experience with people on drugs and that you can kind of spot that thing. But this was something where it was so not based in reality, and there was no outward energy pulsating from them that this was like a chemical.
Okay. So they were saying all of it very straight.
They believed it. Like, I'm sure.
Right, so there was no slurring or anything like that.
Totally clear, clear, totally conscious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're probably right.
Very
and
interesting. Like it was weird because like working in that sort of industry, I was confronted by a lot of cases where people were, had mental illnesses or problems with that, and people would complain about them, but it would be like, no, they're not doing what you think they're doing.
Right.
They're going through something, and they're not viewing what you're viewing like whatsoever. And like I had to pretty much, because I considered it as an extremely progressive venue, so I was like, all right, I need to figure out what that means and how to deal with that kind of person, like what they're looking for, where the miscommunication is sort of happening.
Right.
So this turned into like, tell me some weird, wacky stories about like gaming bars. Gaming bars are cool. And I'm still going into like a fucking trope about mental health and
all according to plan. This is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. But no, I think my time with gaming bars was very beneficial for me in the fact that it was the only time that I've ever really been like forced to sit down and think about mental health and like work on it and like figure it out essentially, and kind of like I learned just so much in general of things that were mystified in my past that may have happened, like no longer was a mystery anymore, because I was like, when so and so, when I saw that person when I was little and they were screaming and their hands were flailing around and people were telling them all these things, like I didn't understand that, and it was just like a big question mark in the back of my head. Or you go, well, that person's crazy, and you just like write it off. But then now it's like after everything with Beta Bar and Mana Bar, it's like, no, so much of that was just demystified. I'm like, oh, that person was like clearly schizophrenic, and they didn't have someone to hold them. They were disassociating, and they didn't have someone to like bring them down. It was like, oh, okay. People need to know more about mental health.
Right.
It demystifies so many like weird things that like people experience, and like it just makes them stupider for not knowing. Life is less rich for not understanding mental health.
Right. So that's all your stuff.
That's all.
All right. Well, I think it's an important message, even if not an expected message. So maybe some of these will relate to mental health as well. But you were wondering about nightmare con stories. Mm-hmm. And did you have any in particular in your times doing different conventions? Because you did a lot. You did most of those same ones that I did, and you did a few that I didn't get to. So did you have any nightmare situations?
What did I do that you didn't do?
You did the one for Suddenly Stoned that I never went to.
Right, yeah.
That was a whole, maybe that was, I don't know if that was a nightmare, but...
that wasn't a nightmare.
It was interesting.
A fascinating one.
Yeah.
That was, because normally when I talk about cons, I'm talking about pop culture and gaming cons.
Okay.
Particularly, that was the Cannabis Cup.
Right.
Which was just... Weed, drugs everywhere.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic. But, I don't think that was a nightmare. I guess the only nightmare part from that one was, I actually had been smoking the most I ever had at that point, so my tolerance was fucked by the time I got there.
Yeah.
So whenever I got there, like, I essentially couldn't get high.
That's
What a waste.
not what I heard.
Well, okay, I managed it. I did manage it in separate occasions. But
Okay,
it
okay.
required a lot of
The amount you had
intense
to do. Yeah.
products.
Yeah, you put in the work. You put
I
in.
did. I had to really lay in the groundwork for that one.
So do you have any nightmare stories from your cons that you went to?
I've had fucking panic attacks in Texas and stuff where I've like not had tickets to get into PAX at all.
Right.
Like I've flown all the way. I think is that PAX? Which one's the one in
That's
what's the one in
PAX.
Texas?
It's PAX South.
South, right? Yeah. I went on that one to work the like a booth, and I got there and realized that we didn't have any passes for me,
Fun.
and so I'm like, I can't get into this convention that I've flown all the way here for.
Yeah.
And luckily, I did manage to find a pass to get in. And there was another time when I was in PAX East in Boston, and a few years ago when there was that blizzard that was coming in, and it was like snowing constantly. And I think we were staying in the same hotel at that time. Anyway, I'd slept in and actually missed my flight out, and then when I was looking at like all the flights and looking at stuff about this blizzard that was coming in, it was like all flights being cancelled. Like you can't get out of Boston. Like, there's all this. I'm like, what the fuck have I done?
Yeah.
And I essentially like I'm calling like on the phone to the airport as I'm like going there, and they're like, no, just keep coming. Like I don't know, but I rock up. All like the flights on the board like cancel, blizzard, cancel. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Right.
Like I budgeted just getting there.
Right.
With exactly the amount of money I have, and then I'm like trapped there. I got on the last flight out of Boston that was physically possible
Yeah.
to make it back to Australia for like a 12-hour thing. That freaked me the shit out.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a
But I
lot
reckon
of...
you've probably got better stories. You hit up way more cons in America than I even have access to over here.
Right, yeah. The one flight thing I did was, and this is a dumb one, but I think it's something that even people that don't do conventions, but just people that travel a lot, potentially at some point when you're getting used to traveling, or maybe you're too used to traveling that you don't worry anymore. I looked at what time this layover was, and I was like, oh man, I got so much time. I'm just gonna take a nap. I got so much time. I set an alarm. So I wasn't being like super irresponsible. I was like, I'm setting an alarm, right? What I had looked at on the itinerary was when I was supposed to arrive, not when I was supposed to leave the airport. And so I blew past when I was supposed to leave from my connecting flight by like at least 2 hours before I even checked on my flight again. And that's like a situation where you're just like, oh, you feel like the biggest idiot in the world for saying like that. But I bet it's one of those ones that happens to like people a lot, because it's like they put all this information and group it so close to each other that it's so easy to like scan and think you're looking at the right field and you're not.
Sure.
And be like, oh no. So that wasn't great. The most ridiculous con we ever went to was we were trying to promote the video game toy line, Pixel Party, and they decided, I had mentioned it'd be cool to go to like a classic gaming convention, which I think was a good idea. I don't take fault with my suggestion, but they didn't want to go to one of the classic gaming conventions that are like actually well known and respected and going for years. They decided to go to a convention that was in its first year because it happened to be in New Jersey where the publisher was located, and it was Coleco Convention.
Oh, that's so specific.
And if you don't know, because this is part of the issue, you may not, the ColecoVision was a console way back in the day, I believe before NES. It was competing with Atari and things like that when people were trying to make like, hey, it's got better graphics, but better graphics meant we've got 2 more colors, or things like that. So it was the people that had bought the rights to the Coleco name decided they were going to have a convention because they wanted to make some announcements, and they built it up as being this really huge thing and suckered in enough people to like come in. Yeah. And I don't exaggerate when I say this. There's pictures of it on my Facebook, but there was more vendors at this convention than there were people that attended the convention. And it sounds like I'm exaggerating because that's such a ridiculous thing to say. It is not an exaggeration. They had a cosplay contest that was giving away a large sum of money, and like 5 cosplayers showed up. So you didn't have to be that good of a cosplayer to like win this huge bounty of money. Whenever you walked by as a vendor, people are so excited just to see a human body walking down the aisle that they would try to sell to you. And when you told them that you were a vendor, the look of sadness and dejection in their face. And I just
almost got a sale.
I bought more stuff at that convention than I usually do because I felt so bad for everyone involved. Because like you really were like, you were never demoing. I think there was like 3 sales from our booth the entire convention. And so it wasn't like it was a bad experience because I was hanging out with people that I liked and we had nothing to do other than goof on how dumb this convention was. And if you are able to take yourself out of a situation, it is funny to see tumbleweeds blowing down aisles with tons and tons of booths that no one's ever going to see or visit. But I had some photos where it just shows absolutely no one walking down these aisles, and it looks like before the show opened, but it is in fact on the Saturday when the show was in full swing. And it was such a clusterfuck.
Was that so the one where I think I remember when you were going there was one thing that you found that you actually did like, and it was like, is it Mad Balls? Or what was that?
Oh, it was they had the guy that did he used to work for Jim Henson Studios, and he invented the Boglins, which was like this puppet. There was a lot of trends in the 90s for toys, and one of the big ones was make it as gross as possible because that's how they marketed to boys. And this
boys like stinky things, scratch and sniff stinky things, and fart spray and gross stuff.
And that is what sold back then. I mean, partially that's what they were selling. So some of it was bound to sell, but it worked on me. And the commercial was just like, hey, get this thing that looks like a goblin. You can freak people the fuck out in your family and make them scared all the time. And I took that as a mission statement. And I had this boglin come up from under, beds and around corners and whatever, and like try to make out with people, and like it was just, I was a complete nuisance with it. And it was the same guy that did the some of the stuff for like Dark Crystal and stuff too. So it's like this, like he's this really talented artist, but he bought back the rights to boglins, but sells them on his own website that like looks like it was made in the 90s. Like it's
he just makes like his own
his own molds. Handmade boglins. Cool. And so I bought one, and I bought a shirt, but I was sad just to see this guy who's like done really cool, interesting stuff and is a really good artist, and he's just sitting there at a table that no one's gonna come to. And it was just like, and it was also just funny to me, like seeing boglins again. So many decades later, I didn't expect to. And at first, like I got the shirt ironically, And then I was like so happy I got it and like legit proud. I was like, no man, like you fucking love this shit growing up, and like the design's great, and how fucking rad is it to have a Boglin shirt at this point? So like,
Absolutely, I was jealous of that shirt.
it became one of my
Dope-ass
favorite
shirt.
shirts. Yeah. So
Yeah.
check out that guy's stuff online. Buy yourself a Boglin shirt and a mini Boglin. So that was real bad. Like outside of that, like I drank more going to conventions for those years than I ever drank in college. By like a really large
the
margin.
hangovers are very different.
I don't really like get hangovers, so that part's good. But, and I also like usually don't get so drunk to the point that like I'm puking and things like that. I had literally the first time I ever drank booze in my life, and you know, when I was like 22 or something, I didn't know anything about alcohol, and so I drank an entire bottle of Jack Daniels, which could kill you.
Yeah.
And so that was real bad. I puked a lot from that. But then from then I was like, okay, I get it. This is how much you're supposed to drink. And like, I paced myself and like, I was really good. And I never puked.
A bottle is not a serving size.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so I went like, you know, I went several years of my adult life being really good about drinking. And then there was this concert, a comedy concert for Cards Against Humanity at Gen Con. And we had like free tickets to it. And at this point, the publisher was also very generous with how they would spend money. And so every drink I could want at this comedy concert was free. I just had to simply ask. And so it ended up where like I went to get a drink, and then some other people came to get a drink, and they wanted to go, you want a drink? And I'm like, well, I'll probably need it at some point. So I got a drink in my hand, and I'm getting another drink. And then we went to and so we go to leave the venue, but I still have these two drinks. I have these two solo cups in my hand, both with vodka. And I don't want to dump it out because a free drink's a free drink. But I also don't want to walk the streets to the next party we're going to carrying these really annoying, walking several blocks carrying these, because they weren't really big on taking Ubers or you know, or lifts, much to my chagrin. So we walked no matter how far across the city we were going half the time. And so I'm sitting there walking with these two solo cups, and I'm just like, this is like, I'm also like pretty drunk at this point, and I'm like, this is such a hassle carrying these two solo cups, but I don't want to dump them. And so I just start going like this as I'm walking, that pace, like drinking this vodka. And by the time I got to the Kickstarter party, like I was in the elevator. I look like those scenes where the guy gets, when like the elevator door opens and the guy's shot and he's like in the corner. Just like flailed. I couldn't stand. It was, and then once I got back to the room at the hotel, it was bad, and I passed out in the shower, and like it was just like not a great. I was not my typical fun self at that point. I had made a serious error. So that wasn't great.
I've heard of those Cards Against Humanity parties being very big. I missed out when I was over there. I think I missed out on any one. I think it was like 2 or 3 I could have gone to at different points. But I've heard some pretty weird things happening at those ones. I went to one of those Kickstarter parties though.
Yeah, those were weird because you think of, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone or anything like that. I'm just talking, and to some degree it's kind of cool that this is the way it is, but to some degree it's also very strange. When you hear like a company like Kickstarter's throwing a party, and you end up showing up at it, and your first thought is, maybe they should have thrown a Kickstarter to fund this party. It was just a regular hotel room. It was just a regular hotel room, but they invited like anyone who'd ever thought about Kickstarter in their life to show up. And you show up in this like hotel room where like, there's no DJ, there's no, like, it was just a bunch of people hanging out in a hotel room, like way too many people in a hotel room. And you're like walking.
You sure you found the right way to the right party if you were this drunk?
They've had other things like Toy Fair dinners and things that they spend a lot of money on and things like that. So like, I'm not saying this is the case all the time. I'm just saying this particular Gen Con Kickstarter party was just like, hey, it's a party, but it's just at our room. And it was just really weird to like walk in and go like, all these people have already been having conversations for hours. You got an invite, but nobody knows you. And like and it's not like a party thing where it's like people are always like moving around. It's a hotel room, so people are just anchored wherever they sat or stood.
You're like, am I allowed to be here?
And so you just walk in and you're just like, it's the most, I don't feel like I have an invite to an invite that you ever had. So I just like walked out. I mean, also I was really drunk at that point, but like I just kind of walked out because it was like, everyone's already having conversations. I don't know how to break into this. This also is like not what I would call a party. Like if I saw it in like a travel brochure, I would not label it as party. So I just got up and left. But like most of the times that I had were pretty good. One time in Australia was really bad because I did the thing where I left my brand new phone. I had just gotten the new Note like maybe a month before, the Galaxy Note, and I left it on the toilet paper dispenser. When I got off the plane, I immediately had to pee. You know, it's a long flight to Australia. And I left the phone on the toilet paper dispenser, and then I go through customs. And I realized literally as soon as I get okayed to go through the customs gate that, oh shit, I left my phone. Now it's only been like less than 5 minutes that it's got to this point. So I'm like, this is scary, but I'm not super worried. I think if I go back right now, I'm gonna get my phone. I tell the customer, hey guys, I just need to go back and get my phone. I left it in the bathroom over there. I'm cool going through this whole process again. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Okay, could anyone just go to the bathroom? My phone's there. No, we can't help you. Then like, it turns out they could help me, but I had to go through so many chains of command before someone was just like, why not just fucking go there with the dude and get the phone? Which is what should have happened in the first place. But by that point it had been an hour, and I knew, I'm happy someone's...
It's harder and harder the longer
I'm happy someone's helping me, but I'm like, I know my phone's not gonna be there. And I go, and of course my phone's not there. Now I'm in a foreign country, and we don't have the skills or set up to like navigate like we used to. You know, you take for granted having a phone in your pocket and being able to just like get up and walk wherever you need to go with the confidence that you're headed in the right direction. And if you go in the wrong direction, that it's going to tell you. And that you can not live exactly like a local, but like a lot closer than what you would be as the old school tourist with like a map trying to figure out.
Because you need to, without that, you needed to like plan things out back in the day. Everything had
But the
to
other
be
thing
planned,
the other thing that's
you can't.
Yeah, the other thing that's disintegrated is like, if you've ever had anyone ask you for directions now, you look at them like, why the fuck are you asking me for directions? Because you have a cell phone, right? And you're just like, so nobody remembers how to get anywhere because they don't have to. And they don't have the skills to be able to tell you how to get somewhere. So I was like, oh, I'll tough it out. Kind of sucks not having a phone. I love taking pictures. I love taking video. Man, this whole trip's going to go undocumented. I was bummed out for that, but I'm like, whatever, I'm still going to do stuff. I go out. I end up like almost immediately getting lost. I'm like asking people how to get places. Totally incapable, or just giving really bad advice as to like where to get, like not even the right direction, like, you know what I mean? So like you're very obviously headed like, now I'm in the suburbs, like what's happening? You know, like this is not where this is supposed to be. And then I like immediately went to like JB Hi-Fi and like bought a tablet because I was just like, at least I can get on Wi-Fi and like, you know, use directions and things like that and take pictures and all that. And, So it made
I lost internet when I was over in the US a few times, and just like essentially my like roaming the new thing I was on was costing like a ridiculous amount of money. It was like, do not touch internet on my phone. Like I needed to get a SIM card, and like for the like day and a half that I didn't have like internet, it was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah,
like,
it's
I know
scary.
exactly what you mean, because it was like even purely just like I have to go all the way out there to get the SIM card. Like cool, I can manage my way there, but then like when I got there, I couldn't get it to work once I had it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to get an Uber back. I'm like,
how do you do that?
I don't have the internet.
Yeah.
I don't know where I am. Right. I don't know
It's scary,
anything. Man. I'm like,
Yeah.
what do I do?
Yeah. Like having
Yeah.
a cell phone, like, and being in another country, it's like you feel so empowered. And it doesn't feel like scary or different or like you're someplace you shouldn't be. It feels like an adventure, and it feels fun, and it's low stress. As soon as like that cell phone goes away, though, it's just you're really worried. Even if it's like
have done Japan.
even if it's a safe country, you're just like, I just don't know where I'm getting, and that's a scary enough thought. And you know that like when you try to explain, maybe like you didn't pay the best attention as to what the hotel name of where you are is. Or like this other information that you could just look on your cell phone and like go, oh, here's what it is. I looked up the email. Here's the information I need to give you, sir, so you can help me. You're just like, it was the one. It had a pointy roof. It was green. And they're like, what the fuck? Just tell me the name of your hotel. And you're like, shit.
How much does that slow things down too? Like it really does just slow stuff down. That's the kind of stuff that would have just like stopped us in our tracks back in the day.
Yeah. So that was like probably like one of my least favorite. But like outside of that, like most of the cons, stuff was like pretty good. I don't get too bothered by much stuff. So I enjoyed it, and I miss like having a situation where I was going to like a different place in the world every month. Like it was pretty cool. Like 1 week a month to just like show up somewhere different in the world. Like that was, I don't know what that job is that I could sign up for where I just show up a different place in the world. Like some people it drives crazy, they hate it. Like I loved it. It was like,
it gets tiring.
But most of my time I was at my house, and so it's like I didn't get that homesickness thing, like because the majority of my month I'm there, like, and I also work, I'm a stay-at-home dad, so I stay home with my kids. So it's like I see a lot of my house. I see a lot of my kids. I see a lot of anyone that wants to see me. And it's like just having 1 week where it's like, hey, 7 days, you're not gonna be able to see me. But literally any other time of the month you could see me. It was like, it's way better.
24/7.
It's way better than like the typical job where it's like you're gone 9 to 5. It was like every day you're like gone for these hours. It was like, I'm here almost every second of your existence, except for this 1 week. And then it's like, so it was cool. But let me move on to a different topic because we went on that one for a long time. And speaking of, I'm going to switch this run around a little bit. Because I think this makes sense because we're talking about traveling and other countries and things. And what do you think, having now been to both places, and I'll contribute as well, but what do you think America is better at versus Australia and vice versa? And I'm not talking like, I'm talking about important things like food and enjoying yourself. I'm not talking about like, political things and stuff like that. That's like
So you're not talking
not super
about
fun.
like America's better at like killing swarms of children.
Right, we all know that. We excel at that. I'm not talking about that.
Less so much that everyone knows about that stuff, Skaidris.
Right.
What does America do better?
What are some things where you're like, I know that you kind of went on like a fast food journey was one of the things that you did.
I did. I went around to like check out, a lot of the big famous, not necessarily big famous ones, but everywhere in the US that they have like, oh, this is the best, this is all. Well, have you been to here and have you had this before? I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna check out everything that America has said is the best fast food or whatever. Like, nah, it was pretty shit. You guys are pretty crap. Like the fast food, it's like the anything that like over here that we have that's like pushed out a lot, like fast food or whatever, like franchises. It's always it is crap to a degree, or it is fast food or junk food to a degree, but like in America you have like all types of preservatives and fake artificially things that you put in stuff just to like the size of your country and the amount of people that you need to feed. Essentially everything needs to be able to last on a shelf for way longer.
Right.
And so there's these weird back end tastes of stuff that doesn't exist in any other country in a lot of these foods. And in fact, you wouldn't. If we both sat and ate something, I would describe what the flavor is to you. You wouldn't be able to taste it, essentially.
Well, I think like some things, like people kind of overhype, which is an issue, right? Like some people just have bad tastes, and especially when we're talking about what people, the majority talk about being great. It's like, I've lived here my whole life, but I go over to California and it's like, oh, In-N-Out. Like people treat it like they just joined Scientology because they go to In-N-Out, it's like, oh, you must not speak ill of In-N-Out, and like it's my life and whatever. And then I go there and I'm like, the fries suck, the burger's not very good. Like I literally don't understand why you like this. But I mean, like I think everyone has their like, here's the exception, and maybe it varies. Like some people will be like, every other fast food sucks, but In-N-Out's the exception. I like it. For me, it's like, hey, like Five Guys, like I really like Five Guys. Like I think the way they make shit is like really good, because they actually know how to make French fries, which is cool. But there's like there is a lot of bad fast food, and I feel like, especially given the capitalist urges of fast food chains and always trying to be like, oh man, like we're not making enough billions of dollars. It's like the food quality has like slid. Like I used to like eating at Burger King back in the day. But now it's like, I'd rather just not eat than go there and eat.
I'd rather just starve.
Right. And it's like, what's kind of weird is going to Australia, because you guys have Burger King, but it's called Hungry Jack's. And it just happened to be the only thing in the airport that was serving lunch. And I felt like having lunch because I knew I was going to be on this perpetual breakfast flight. Real annoying. Like, I hate it. Like, just the same meal over and over again because of the time zones you're going in. I'm like, fuck, like, I've been on a plane. Please move me along. Like, I'd like to get on a fucking breakfast. But you're just like on this perpetual breakfast flight back to America. So I was like, no, fuck, I'm in breakfast now for fucking a whole day. I'm going to have something that's not breakfast. And I had it, and I was like, this is really weird because it's the same menu essentially as Burger King in the US, but because the beef and things are like locally sourced, I was like, it tastes like the Burger King I had in the 90s.
Right.
Like but because like it's not even like they're like, hey, we care more. It's just because it'd be more expensive for them to ship the shitty like stuff that they're selling in the US. So they're just like, all right, whatever, source it from Australia, and it just happens to be the burger patties and things are just better.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I guess in general, that's the difference when we talk about the good things that America does better, like versus what Australia does better. I think a lot of it is like it's a double-edged sword. Like, the thing that America does better is that there's way more people there in general, and so you have larger pools of creative groups and so they can just do things with more people because it's easier to like get it funded.
Yeah.
So you see bigger things happen, bigger movies happen, more creative projects happen. There's more like groups to like swim in, where over here it's probably like a big fish in a small pond type thing.
Yeah.
But it also means that, because you've got so many people over there, things are mass produced and the quality like goes down, like we said. So, but over here, that's less so much the point. And so it's like the best things like about America kind of come from the fact that there are just so many of you.
Right.
And so there's like more like interesting creative minds sort of like in the same area to be able to clash with.
Yeah.
Where over here, like, it's interesting, like, I mean, a lot of the groups that I've always sort of worked with, it took a long time for me to build up my sort of geek community and my geek friends and everything. But then I go to the US and it's like whole conventions on which would have just our geek community would all be there, but it would just be about some niche thing, like
He-Man, right? Like they just
Coleco
announced a new He-Man TV series for Netflix at a convention that's entirely just about He-Man.
Yeah.
Because you can get enough people together to pay for, and then some, a convention that's just all about this one show from the 80s, So
I mean, and then that's why, that's essentially why the only way we can really justify having PAX even in Australia is because, that company, was set up in America and has all this money coming in from doing all their other things for them to be able to throw a show that size in Australia. Because all the other conventions that are in Australia otherwise are probably definitely less than a quarter of the floor space for stuff.
Well, both
and,
of
they wouldn't get any big names down. They're just gonna get local vendors that are just sort of the local vendors that usually would be around the most cons here. They're not the vendors that are producing the content themselves. They'll be more toy stores or collectors who just have a bunch of different other people's things that they've got from overseas, and they're all overpriced. So it's what's the point of this?
Yeah. Both of the big video game conventions that you have, to your point, are PAX and Rooster Teeth, both being RTX, both being like you said, US based conventions that happen to make this satellite convention over in Australia, almost because someone else hadn't made something to that scale yet, so they're just well, we'll be there to do it,
And they were the people to do it as well, because they had all those connections with the big companies to convince them that they should come down for this event. Because we have local publishers and that around here, but they will only get a fraction sort of the funding that anyone else gets.
Right.
So what they're able to pull off locally is usually not very big, unless they have someone who has his track record of proof of it being worth it for them.
Right.
So thank God that they and Reed Pop sort of stepped in and really proved it for them and upped the game.
Yeah. So you're talking about food in America versus Australia. So my only real beef with Australia as a country was, I travel this very long distance, and I travel a full day to get to this country, and I'm like any other destination that I show up at, rubbing my hands together, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to try the local cuisine. Let me find out why are they keeping it hidden, man? I haven't seen the only Australia joint in the U.S. is the Outback Steakhouse, and that's just that's a house built on lies. There's nothing about.
It's not Australian at all.
they just decided that it'd be fun to have an Australian accent on some ads. There's nothing about, and so I'm my whole life I'm shitting on the Outback Steakhouse, right? Because I'm what a bunch of fucking bullshit. And then I show up in Australia, and I'm now I'm gonna find out the fucking truth. Where is the Australian cuisine? Point me to it. I'm gonna check it out. And then I find out that it doesn't exist. And then I'm well, now I know why Outback Steakhouse is built on lies, because they probably decided first on the gimmick and then did the research and were shit, there's nothing to build this restaurant on.
It was a theme first.
Yeah. They're there is no, because it sounds more exotic when you're hey, come to this steakhouse that's Australian. When it's it's the same fucking steakhouse as any other steakhouse. They just put Australian accents on the...
Which is fucking twisted too, because Australia is a multicultural country, so all our cuisine, or just food in general that we have, is just a wide breadth of different kind of cultures and stuff that they have. But we have interesting sort of twists on that here, and the biggest crime about Outback Steakhouse actually is that we do have fucking great meat and and steaks and all that sort of stuff as well, but you would never they can't get that. Like, you can't get that over there.
Right.
They wouldn't want to. Like, it's
Right.
not. It would cost. It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, lamb. Well, lamb is like a massive thing in Australia, and it wasn't until I got to America that I realized it's not there.
Yeah.
It's not for a lot of countries as well, because lamb over there, like, it tastes. It's lamb dressed up as mutton. It's just, it smells almost like urine. Like, there's this weird, like, thing to it, but, like, lamb over here is, like, sweet and, like, almost, like, salty and all that, and then, like,
who's sending you to these restaurants, Skaidris? I have a theory that
this is what I've been told by people, is that people in America and
You're like,
countries
I just like
don't
this-
have lamb. It's very rare I saw lamb like on the menu.
I like this idea that, like, you're like, man, what the fuck is up with food? And, like, it's just a bunch of people, like, giving you poor advice. And they're like, hey, check out this restaurant, Skaidris. And, like, it's like secretly they dislike you, and this is their way of, like, needling you, is, like, having you spend your time in America going to, like, bad options for food.
These are from my tests. This is my experiments.
So, like, if the Outback Steakhouse was trying to represent Australia from my time there, you would have chicken parm. You would have complimentary banana bread, and maybe just because of your daddy, you would have some meat pies. That's
just it. Literally, if there was going to be a restaurant which was Australia themed,
right?
Yeah, it would be like a joke restaurant essentially, because they would be so starkly different things. Like, oh, this with Vegemite in it, and Vegemite sandwich, and
right, yeah.
Fuck it, meat pie, and like all these things you said exactly. Like, they're all just things that we like love as almost like, I don't know, we've adopted everything.
There was like, when I read a tourist guide before I went to Australia, and they were trying to talk about Australian dishes, they kept claiming other countries' dishes as their own because they really like it. It was like, oh, you got to try the Australian chicken parm. And I'm like, fuck you. Like just because you like something, it doesn't make it yours. Like, that's not how it works.
See, I don't think we've ever claimed it.
I'm talking about exclusively on, like, tourist guides, right? Where they're like,
this tour guidebook, right?
Right, because they couldn't list, like the only thing I had that I'm like, this was Australian, was just, like, the types of meat, to your point. It was like, okay, I'm not going to get kangaroo meat, back home.
Kangaroo meat's great.
But the thing is, right, like, there wasn't, like, some wild way they were making kangaroo meat that I was like, oh, it's a whole new recipe that just happens to have it was just like, oh, it's like any other meat would be brought to you, but it just happens to be kangaroo meat. But the great parts were the things that I'm saying in my faux Outback Steakhouse that I'm now building, is like, it was really cool as a person who loves chicken parm. It was really cool to be able to go, like, almost anywhere I was at and get, like, chicken parm. I like chicken parm. I'm not complaining about that. It was really cool to be able to go to, like, any place that serves coffee or any place, like, that's a convenience store and just be like, grab some fucking fresh baked banana bread. Why not? I'm like, I like banana bread probably more than anyone I've ever met. So, like, I'm on board with this plan that's been set up. I'll eat the banana bread and I'll eat the chicken parm. I'm down with it. So it was a good experience for sure. It was just, it's very interesting to come from a country where you could go, like, a state over and someone's like, hey, you ever had the whatever the fuck dish? And you're like, what the hell is that? You're like, oh, it's a thing you wouldn't know about unless you live in this state. And it's like, you're a few miles away. Like, what the hell? Yeah. And it's like this totally different food item that, like, is made in this particular
regional
state.
Accents doesn't make any sense.
It's a lot of, it's like really varied, like, from area to area. And so it's like, I haven't tried all the food that's, all the different types of food that's made in America, because I haven't been able to travel because of the vast size. I haven't been able to travel to, like, every state in the US. So there's still, like, a bunch of stuff that I'm like, maybe I'll be able to try this food before I die. I don't know, because I just haven't been there. But it's like, it was just interesting because, like, every other country that I had been to, like Germany and Japan and stuff. It's like I'm going there and I'm like, wow, these people are eating some really different food from like what I'm used to. And it was a fun experience of like checking it out and like being like, oh fuck, I need to figure out how to make that when I get home. Because like this is a dish that I've never would have had access to that now I've tried, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to buy this in the US, so I need to make it because I want to have it again. And it's like, I was like, I can't wait to collect those in Australia. And I was like, well, I guess now occasionally when I make chicken parm, I'll throw ham under the cheese, you know? But this is totally unrelated. I don't have a great transition for this one. But you're talking about the geekiest thing that you've ever done. Is there something that you were thinking of?
Well, this will probably have to be my last question, just so you know, because I got to get some things done in a little bit. But yeah, so that we'll cut that bit. But yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Wait, so ask that again.
So you were wondering about the geekiest thing that you've ever done.
Yeah, what's like, because you're someone who moves in the same circles of geekdom like me.
Right.
And it's weird because I don't think we see what we do as being geeky anymore, like at all, because know, we're proud of who we are and what we're interested in. But what can you view as the geekiest thing that still contextually you see for yourself is the geekiest thing?
That's like, it's tough because I think as soon as you start getting an audience and making money off of something, it seems less geeky when you're doing it. You know, like if you were like, hey, I'm making my own board games and you're just playing it with your friends, people are like, well, you're going through all the hassle to make board games? That's a weird thing. Like, what a nerd. And I think that's a normal reaction, but as soon as you're like, yeah, I make board games and people buy them all over the world, it's like all of a sudden, like, there's this weird thing with how much other people give a shit about what you do.
It validates it.
Deciding on whether something's geeky or not, which it shouldn't, but for whatever reason it does, especially with people that aren't in a hobby. So they'll be like, you know, some guy makes his own D&D campaign and people are like, man, what a loser, right? For a certain group of people. But if he was like, then, yeah, you know, I make these stories that people all across the world play, and now it's being turned into an HBO TV series. You know, people are like, oh man, what an awesome dude. You know, and it's like nothing.
I can't believe you stuck through it.
Yeah. Like if before George R.R. Martin was who he is now, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people that are looking at this guy who looks like, you know, an old boat captain who's always in bookstores and writing stories about dragons and, you know, and people fighting with swords and stuff and going like, man, what is up with that? Our neighbor, he's such a dork. But it's like, as soon as he's got all these things he's doing, it's like, oh man, what a cool dude. Yeah, let me take a photo with him. What an awesome dude. So it's, I mean, the only thing I can think of where it's like, it's above and beyond as well is, I like drove all the way to New York for the launch of Metal Gear Solid 4 to be at the store that Hideo Kojima was going to be handing out the first copies of Metal Gear Solid 4 in the world. And I like missed it by like 3 people being able to like get it handed to me from him and signed and stuff. So it was like, it was still cool to be there and be in the energy, but it was like, oh, if I just had shown up 15 minutes sooner. But that's something that not a lot of people would do, you know, but that's like, so it totally made sense to me.
I think I flew up to Sydney during E3 purely just for the Bethesda conference.
Yeah.
Because they were doing like the local Bethesda team in Australia were having like a showing in this bar, and they're like, oh, we'll have some prizes and giveaways and stuff. And it was the year that like, we knew they were announcing Fallout 4, essentially, and I was a massive Fallout fan. And so we made cosplays and stuff and then flew up for it there and, like, entered a little cosplay competition and stuff, and then just, like, saw their announcements for it, like, cool, all right, back on a plane, fly back into Melbourne. Like,
Yeah.
no real reason other than just we were there.
Yeah. Okay, so you got me beat. I didn't get on a plane. Although, I mean, I guess I could have. It probably would have been quicker if I had. So.
But I mean, none of that's as cool as, that's the thing about, we'll go back to the America-Australia thing again, is like, you guys just get, because a lot of them interesting people are local to there anyway, or even if they're not, like, they're more likely to come to America to do stuff like that than Australia.
Right.
So the idea of just even having access to a lot of these people, or like niche groups of that, are just not possible here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very rarely, and then it's like, they're at this one convention that's been flown out, and you've got to buy this ticket, and you've got to come to this convention, you've got to line up for this long, and then you're not allowed to do that, you're not allowed to do it. It's like, well, fuck that, I'm not going to do that then.
Well, it's just, before I really did any, research on Australia, because I wasn't going to be there, and just was like, you do your cursory, like, whatever I get told, I'll find out, and when I'm interested in a topic, I'll look it up kind of thing. It was like, I just had no concept, because you're just looking at the size of the mass of the country, and you're making assumptions about what that means. And those assumptions aren't met by reality, because it's not like it is here, where it's like there is a whole lot of population across the entire map. Like it's, even there's areas that are like not a lot of people, but like it's all relative, like it's a huge volume of people. And so you look at Australia without knowing anything about it, and you're like, oh, okay, like that's a pretty good sized country. And then you look at the population numbers, and you're like, and you look at where the population distribution is and stuff.
Yeah, if
and you're
like
like
a heat map of it.
Yeah, it's a donut. Like, and you're like, whoa, that's weird. Like everyone's on the coast, and there's not that many people. Like, there's more cows maybe
we're
than
sort of
people.
down the bottom right, and then there's a couple over here, and then a couple up there. But like, even then, like the like Perth, it's on the entire opposite side of the country of where I am, and then Darwin, which is at the very, very top. Those are like towns that are like, Perth is the most remote city on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, and it's because in between like there and where all the coastal like cities where people are, like it's just unlivable. Like, we have droughts and stuff constantly, so if you're gonna actually like be in those spaces and develop them, there just isn't the water to handle it. And it's just so hot there that it was impossible. So like when people look at Australia, it's like, if you have an idea of what that is, definitely then just look at like a heat map of like populations.
Right, yeah, it's interesting.
Where they all are, and you'll see it's like, oh, it's just like Melbourne, Sydney, and then scattered along the sides, the rest of it. And if there's anyone living in the middle, they're like, that's the outback. Like, that's not, that's like, they're a different type of human,
Right, yeah. All right, well, Skaidris, I feel like we've talked through a lot of different topics here. And
do you reckon you can go back to sleep?
I've gotten more used to your very strong gaze, so I feel like I could sleep. So thank you again. Goodbye.
Well, thank you very much for having me in your bed, even though wasn't really asked here. I just knew my buddy Razlo wanted me in here with him.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Night.
All right. Good night.
Thanks for checking out Keeping Me Up. I'd like to thank our guest today, Skaidris. Please support his channel on YouTube at Geek Punk. That's GeekPunk. To see all sorts of silly video game videos and give him a subscribe to thank him. Want to support the games, video, or audio content I make? You can donate as much or as little as you like on patreon.com/GameYayFun. That's GameYayFun. You can check out new episodes broadcast in video format on twitch.tv/GameYayFun, and an audio version of every episode is available at anchor.fm/GameYayFun, or just search GameYayFun in your podcast service of choice. If you don't have any money but still want to support the show, and you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free Twitch Prime subscription. Use it on Game Yay Fun on Twitch and take some of Jeff Bezos' money and give it to me. Let me know how you like the show by messaging me on Twitter at Razlo, and I'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of Keeping Me Up and a new guest. Thank you for your time, and I hope I kept you gruntled. And do something kind for yourself and someone else every day. Good night. Special thanks to music-note.jp for providing the theme song to Keeping Me Up with the track name Desire Moon.